We're searching across North America to deliver the latest event ideas, inspiration, and resources directly to your inbox. If you don't already receive the BizBash buzz, what are you waiting for? Sign up for our newsletter today at bizbash.com/BizBashBuzz.
Are you a follower?
Okay, so we're gonna call the ad.
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here's your host, BizBash chairman and founder, David Adler.
On this edition of GatherGeeks, our guest is former Obama administration chief of protocol and former Clinton administration social secretary, Capricia Penavic Marshall. This month, she launches her new book, Protocol: The Power of Diplomacy and How to Make It Work for You. In this three-part podcast interview, I hope to give listeners a true insider peek into the highest levels of the inner workings of public service. You will notice the importance of events, meetings, and celebrity gatherings as an essential part of leadership. Hear about the concept of smart power or soft power, the power of human connections. Ambassador Marshall's new book is a must-read for anyone who thinks strategically about the results of these connections. In this first episode, we wanted to take a more personal look at what it felt like to be offered the job of Social Secretary for the President of the United States and the Chief of Protocol. Hear how Ambassador Marshall went from working on the Bill Clinton presidential campaign to having a front row seat to history for over a dozen years. Let's take a listen. I want you to sort of go down memory lane a little bit and sort of play out the two phone calls or the two meetings that you had when you were offered the job of social secretary and when you were offered the job of chief of protocol. What going through your brain? What did you think? And then I want to go into how did you prepare for those jobs?
So I had been working in the Clinton administration for 3.5 years. And I've been working very closely with the then social secretary, Ann Stock, on all of the events, and in particularly the personal style of the First Family. I was working directly with the First Lady as her assistant and would be the bridge, if you will, between the First Lady and the social office. So I got to really learn the operations of the social office, the stylings of the First Family, the President, and Mrs. Clinton. And so when it came time, when Ann Stock had decided that she wanted to step down from the position, all eyes naturally turned to me to continue to be that continuity of the same style, the same apparatus that had already been working so incredibly well for the Clintons, the first administration. And we were traveling overseas, and then Mrs. Clinton called me to her suite. We were in Vienna, and I, not thinking of the position, not knowing why she was calling me to her suite, of course I just went and thought it was something about the trip. And she said, I want you to sit down, and I have something that I really want to ask you. So I sat down, and she said, I have been thinking long and hard about who will succeed in the position of who will follow in Ann Stock's footsteps here. And I believe the president believes that you are the right person to take on this position. And although I knew that my name had been bantered about, and I certainly would love to have taken on the job, I was taken aback. I was sort of speechless at the moment. And I immediately said to her, are you sure? And then I started doubting myself and thinking, well, I really love what I'm doing right now. I travel the world with her. I manage all of the interactions with the West Wing, the policy objectives, and I'm a go-between on anything that's important between the first family and any operation in the White House. Why would I give this up? This is an amazing, amazing job. And now I know how to do this really well. And I said that to her. I said, well, I think I'm okay with what I'm doing right now. And I really love what I'm doing. I think I want to just continue doing that. And, I look back on it now, the doubt that I had in my head about my own personal capacity to step into a leadership role, a role that had great management requirements, a role that just would move me into a different career path. I'm now incredulous that I said this to her. So she was incredulous as well. And she said, I'm so sorry. And I just wanted to get out of the room. I wanted to leave the suite. So I said, well, I actually have to go. I have to go, Hillary. And I just scooted out of the room and made my way back to my room. Well, moments later, the then chief of staff, Maggie Williams, and her deputy, Evelyn Lieberman, called me up. And they said, come to our suite right now, because they were also on the trip. And I knew what this meant. And so I went to their room and sheepishly walked through the door, and they looked at me and they said, have you lost your mind? Everyone in this White House believes you can do this job except for you. You have just told the First Lady that you're turning her down? No. You are absolutely marching back up into that suite, and you are going to accept this position. Listen, we know it is hard to cross over and to become a principal, if you will. And taking that step can sometimes be a little scary. And you have been playing a wonderful supportive role throughout your entire lifetime so far in this White House. You need to step into this position. And again, they reinforce the president believes in you. The First Lady believes in you. We all believe in you. Everyone believes in you, and no one will allow you to fail. So you are going to do this job.
It's interesting though. Why don't you finish your story and then I have a question.
For the First Lady of the United States, working for the First Family, I realized that by investing in a mentor, it gave me a support system that became incredibly valuable at that moment. People who were, who cared about me, who wanted to see me succeed, who wanted to make sure that I was seeking out all opportunities and taking advantage of them, who saw life from a higher branch than where I sat, and so could advise me on that next step upwards. So all three, Hillary, Maggie, and Evelyn, had really invested in my career, my future, by becoming my mentors. And when they saw this wonderful opening, they reached that hand down and were pulling me up. And by having their support, their belief in me, I felt like I could take that next step forward. So I would really advise young people, find someone who you trust, whose judgment you value, but they're not going to be judgmental, who have lots of opportunities that they can offer you, great resources that they can offer you. Mentorship is invaluable. And it is proven that those who have great mentors continue to rise in their careers, continue to develop their career at a better pace, and find different and more opportunities more often than those who don't.
Yeah, but there's an interesting thing here. You're talking about find a mentor. What did these people see in you as a mentee? What are the characteristics that said, oh my God, this woman has got it, and we adore her? And it's hard to answer that question about yourself, but there's certain characteristics that you probably showed them in how you did your job that I'm going to invest in this person?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I believe in that it is a two-way street. Not only are you seeking someone who can advise you, but also you want to be that person that they want to mentor. And so first and foremost, be hungry. I was hungry. I wanted all opportunities. When I first took on the position with Hillary in her office at the White House, I went directly to the curator's office. I sat there and absorbed all the information that I could about former first ladies, what the usher's office did, any book that had any historical information by any predecessor. I was combing through it, pulling out wonderful anecdotes, great lessons, and using them when I found that they were, when it was beneficial. So I really did my research. I totally wanted to prepare for my position. It was a new position. The assistant to the first lady was one that really didn't fit within the current structure. So how was I going to make that work? I decided to be the liaison with the social office. And so built up a great rapport with Ann Stock, who was the social secretary, and her entire team. She had a great team of people. I also then learned everything there was to know about the usher's office, and who at that time was being led by Gary Walters. And so really connected with him and all of the ushers that worked for him, developing great relationships. I was there at 5:30 in the morning. So I made sure that I was always there before the first family woke up, and I was there until they went to bed. That first year, I have to say I was pretty tired, but I didn't want to miss an opportunity. I wanted to make sure that I was always available for anything that might arise. And that's also a good aspect of being a good mentee. You want to be team oriented. You don't want to just say, oh, I'm just going to stay in my lane. No, I'm going to be available for anything that you might need. And that became the case. When other people had gone home, I was there to make sure that the president received late night briefings. I was the person who would go to the family space to deliver any news, to set up late night calls. I then went on every foreign trip, made sure that I was liaison with the State Department, with the Office of Protocol, to learn all the nuances of culture that they needed to know so that they were fully prepared. I just made myself an invaluable asset to them. And that's what a mentor wants. And surely that's what a first family really needs, is someone who dives into the job and who wants to make sure that they're providing as much information as they possibly can so that they're fully prepared for anything that might come their way.
Well, and you and Secretary or First Lady Hillary Clinton were navigating this on your own early parts of the administration too. I would assume that there was a lot of co-learning together that you both had to do together. I'm sure that was an interesting part of it.
That's an excellent point. There was. She had never been First Lady before, and so a great deal of what I was doing, the research that I was taking upon myself, was to provide her information on what had First Ladies done before, and working with former teams, from getting to know Mrs. Barbara Bush's team, getting to know Mrs. Carter's team. There were even conversations that she had me a part of with Jackie Kennedy on how do you raise a child in the White House, because she also wanted me to have that special relationship with her daughter. They had an only child, and unlike other children who had lived in the White House, where they had a sibling to depend upon, to look to for support, Chelsea really was an island. And so I became a close confidant of hers, and made sure I was a bridge to the White House for her if there were issues that came up. And then also taking on the way her mother wanted the White House to function for Chelsea in the vein of having lots of other friends around. So for any type of celebration, we made sure, or any type of engagement, we made sure that there wasn't just one friend, but there were multiple friends that she was able to share the experience with. Birthday parties, we made sure that the house felt less like a museum and more like a home. We wanted her to feel as though she was having as quote unquote normal an experience as she possibly could. And I worked very closely with Hillary on creating that atmosphere for Chelsea.
We get it. Event pros around the world are shifting their event strategies to virtual and hybrid events, and it's nearly impossible to sort through all the different platforms and programs. Well, it's your lucky day. The BizBash Virtual Event Guide does the work for you, highlighting only the top partners for everything from all-in-one virtual event platforms to virtual team building activities. Get started now at bizbashvirtualeventguide.com.
So go on. You have to go into how you felt and maybe how Hillary felt when you were talking to Jackie Onassis. Was that as thrilling as it sounds like it would be?
She had such a tremendous friendship with Jackie Kennedy and was able to rely upon her for some good advice and guidance on how to raise a child in the White House. And it was I was only privileged to one quick call immediately after where we talked about just the idea of friendship. But it was like you had just heard from the an historic figure, and she was, an extraordinarily historic figure, and her advice was so spot on, and it was so caring and nurturing. So she wanted to make sure that Chelsea was cared for and protected. She understood the glare of the camera, even though it was a different era, but that the spotlight still was going to shine pretty brightly on Chelsea, and in particular because she was the only child, and she was a little older than her own children were at the time. So it was really lovely the way she, and I have to say all the former first ladies, so many of formers, you're all invested in making sure that the current inhabitant is going to do okay. And if they need your advice, you're there to offer it. You're there to assist them in making that transition, because everybody knows the weight of the weight of being that first family, what that can do to, in particular, children of the first family.
So it also sounds like, one of the things we're friends for a long time, and one of the things I've noticed about you is that you never just do the job. And this is sort of epitomizes that. You seem to go way beyond the call of duty in every job that you do to make it something more than what it is on paper. And it sounds like this first role really gave you the training to do that. So stepping into the social secretary role was probably much easier than you could imagine. Is that true?
I think that's true. I think that is true. The newness of joining the White House in 1993, when you had a young president, a young first lady, and a young child, everything was dramatically different than their predecessors. And so how did you help them create an environment, develop a style that would be suitable for who they wanted to be to America? And it was exciting. It was truly exciting to be a part of that endeavor, sitting around the dining room table on the second floor and thinking about how we wanted to showcase the best of America. And through every element in that White House, from the new decor that was required in some of the staterooms to the food service, how that was going to change dramatically from a former French cuisine to now a more American style, if you will, of both service and design and elements, and a different chef, bringing a completely different chef to do that. Every element was being looked at and everything was going to be changing. And to be a team member in all of that was really exciting. And what I so cherish now is that Hillary looked to us to be invaluable advisors and truth tellers in all of that. She does not like yes people. She doesn't want advice that would massage her ego. She wants sound, well thought out, well constructed, creative advice. And so that's what we all sought to do, and to help her really create what would become known as the Clinton style.
And did the Clinton style go through any iterations? I would assume that you sat around sometimes saying, well, this may not work or this works better. Was that the case?
Yeah, of course, there were some elements that at first were perhaps too ambitious, in the sense that I only mean that in the size. Sorry?
No, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, the size of events that, we were really going very big at first and having, great South Lawn events and enormous dinner parties. And then they decided to really look into having more intimate affairs, and balancing the two and understanding when it was better for the messaging and the goals of an event to have it smaller in size and in one of the parlor rooms, or even on the second floor of the White House, utilizing the private dining room, which was very personal, very intimate, or the yellow oval room on the second floor. It was an elegant receiving room, but again, was on the family floor of the White House, still stately, but certainly inviting people into a more personal space. So when to utilize those spaces, and then when to have something in the Rose Garden that would be a bit more dramatic and open, or on the South Lawn, or in a large constructed tent. The thing is that the Clintons just wanted to invite as many people into the White House as possible. They most truly believed in that this is the people's house, and that as many people as they could possibly invite in to share in this experience, they wanted to do so. So our schedule was insane. We were working from the top of the day until we went to bed in the wee hours. Both of them had incredibly ambitious schedules that were going on, as well as the Vice President Gore, and Mrs. Gore, even though they also entertained at the Naval Observatory, their residence. There was just something happening constantly. We were on the second floor, and then something in the Rose Garden. Then we had something after that in the State Dining Room, and then later in the evening in the East Room. It was just a constant flow of events, constant flow of inviting people in. And I loved that. That whole excitement was wonderful. It was exhausting, but it was wonderful.
What was the first goosebump moment that when you were doing an event at the White House, either as social secretary or as the assistant to the First Lady?
I think for me, the first goosebump moment was that first day. I so recollect fondly they were welcoming people through the White House and standing and shaking hands, as had been the tradition years before with the president and the First Lady. And you could see the people's faces as they were winding down Pennsylvania Avenue to make their way to the gate to shake hands with this new president and new First Lady. They were thrilled beyond belief. And I was so taken with the excitement, because you can sometimes get really involved in the details, and you're more about the list and the functionality and the logistics, and we've got to make this happen. And when you can step back for an instant and watch how everything is unfolding, and to see how it was affecting those it was intended for, which is the general public, on this inauguration day, it filled my heart with such gratitude and joy to be privileged to be standing there and to be a part of it all. People were looking for that better tomorrow. They were investing in the future along with this president and first lady. And that is what the first lady symbolizes for America, a better tomorrow for us all. And how will you represent us in the country, and how will you represent us in the world? It was a moment that will stay with me forever. Wow. And I understood how I now was stepping into this path of the footsteps of history, and that I will forever have had a life that was going to be quite unique. I didn't know how unique at the time, but now looking back on it, I am even more grateful than I ever could be.
How do you do you go and have that moment now for all the events and experiences that you have? How do you take it in? Because you really have been a part of history for so many years. How do you really appreciate it on a day-to-day basis? When you do an event, you sort of spend a moment saying, oh my God, this is fantastic, or whatever. Is there a way that you do that?
Oh, yes. I think consistently not being burdened by or overwhelmed by the magnitude of what you're doing, but sort of rising above the noise and the din to experience the historic reference, to see it again through the eyes of those who oftentimes it was their first time in the White House. You just have to step out of that bubble of activity, and it can be for 30 seconds, it can be for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but just taking that moment to stop the wheels from turning on the step-by-step that you put into place, and to be able to see that really gave me a clear perspective also. You can put everything into place for an event, and unless it's having that desired effect, it's not working. And so I found it so helpful in looking forward on how we were going to continue conveying this visually the communications of the president's agenda by taking that step out and seeing, is this really working? Do people feel the connectivity with the president's goals, the policy, the first lady's intentions, all of that? And if they're not, we're not doing something right.
Right. So
and we have to make adjustments.
Yeah. So you're thinking strategically all the time, it sounds like. Absolutely.
It is there are objectives in everything that we were doing. There were goals that we were trying to satisfy. And if we're not hitting those markers, then something is not coming together right. And so we would have to readjust. Was it the environment? Was it the room? Was it the program? Was it the remarks? Was it the person who did the introductions? What element of this was not particularly working? Or perhaps it was the event in its totality. Maybe this is something that we should suggest to the First Family. You shouldn't be doing this on White House grounds. Maybe this is something that should be happening elsewhere. And we often did move to alternative locations with Hillary and with the president because there was a better place that an event should be held as opposed to inside the White House. There's a formality. There's a real formality to the state rooms. And even though sometimes when we had events with children, perhaps it was better to have those events in school or in a hospital setting, or somewhere that wasn't as formal of a structure.
Great.
And there were other events where the White House worked splendidly well, in particularly with children. And I recall this one, really vividly with President Clinton, where he was trying to talk about foreign policy objectives, what was happening in the world with young adults. And they had put on the State Department floor a big map of the world so that he could literally point out in the world why they were engaging with people from that country and what was the effect and what was possibly going to happen from our engagement. And they were asking questions as, again, they were looking at the map, and he just sat on the stool, taking all of these questions in and answering them. It was incredibly effective. It was, so much so that it has stayed with me over the years, because I saw that he was able to click with them with having the visual of the map and sitting on a stool as opposed to, a more formal seating. It was very approachable. They felt like it was approachable. It was like teacher-student. It was that sort of environment. And it worked. It really worked. And conveying the hardships of some of these engagements, the importance of them, and also the aftermath of them as well.
So let's move on a little bit to, let me ask you the same question I asked you when we started about how you found out that you were offered the job of Chief of Protocol. You're the only person that has had both the role of Social Secretary and Chief of Protocol. What were those circumstances like, and how did it make you feel, and what happened?
Well, again, I was, I'm beholden to Hillary Rodham Clinton yet again. After being offered the position of Secretary of State, she had requested of President Obama to fill positions at the State Department with key individuals. And she was able to do that. The position of Chief of Protocol reports, even though it is housed at the State Department, it reports directly to the president. And so even though she could appoint everyone else, she could not appoint the Chief of Protocol. She could suggest names, but she could not make that singular appointment. And so at the very top of the administration, as soon as she took on the posting, she went to the president and said, I have the perfect person to become your Chief of Protocol. Now, historically, the position is given to someone who has been a part of your network for a long period of time, a long time, perhaps donor to you, someone who has been helping you throughout the campaign and invaluable in getting you to the position of presidency. It certainly is not given to someone that you've never met even before. And the president took my name under consideration, went back to his team, and later I learned there was quite a bit of controversy surrounding my appointment, and that people were very hesitant about affirming the selection because the position really required you to be so close to the president. You travel alongside the president. You are there constantly in the White House when he's receiving foreign visitors. It is a position of trust, and they were not quite sure I could be trusted. And I understand that. I understand how you want to protect the president from anyone who you don't particularly know well. But the president himself took Secretary Clinton's, sound advice and was really swayed by that. In addition to her words of support, people like John Podesta and Cheryl Mills really reinforced my capabilities to President Obama and to other senior members of his team, like to Dennis McDonough and to Valerie Jarrett. And in the end, then they were persuaded to give me a go. Let's try her out. And so he then put my name forth and to become chief of protocol, and sent it up to the Senate because it is a position that needs Senate confirmation because it holds the rank of ambassador.
And so what was it like the first time you met him in this official capacity?
Well, it was very exciting. I was very excited to meet President Obama and to work with him. The first trip was a little interesting. It wasn't a little interesting. It was very interesting. It was exciting. It was very exciting. But also, I have to say, of course, I had some butterflies and wanted to make sure that I was not just prepared, but was beyond prepared for anything that was going to come our way. I researched well all of the engagements, or the recent engagements that the U.S. had with China.
Thanks, Capricia. We are going to publish the next episode that will continue the journey and especially start with that first trip to China with President Obama. If you want to hear more about Protocol, I do recommend buying Protocol, The Power of Diplomacy. If you have any questions for Ambassador Marshall, please send me a note via email at dadler@bizbash.com. That's DADLER@bizbash.com. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter @GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on.